The spread of Islam began in the early 7th century during the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and continued after his death. Some historians said that post-conversion are a large part of its success, but it's not true. In this video, I have discussed about the true reasons behind the spread of Islam and Islamic culture worldwide. Conquests after the death of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Early military conquests were an important factor in the initial spread of Islamic culture. Immediately after the death of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Muslims established the first caliphats or communities ruled by Islamic leaders. Between 632 and 740 CE, both east and west from the Arabian Peninsula, the Rashidun and Umayyad caliphates expanded, eventually encompassing Spain, the north coast of Africa, and the present day of Middle East as far as Afghanistan. Political decentralization and fragmentation. The Abbasid massive empire, spanning over 4,000 miles, was impressive but very difficult to maintain. And Abbasid religious authority was also wavering as a more powerful class of religious scholars at the helm of new religious institutions challenged the legitimacy of system of caliphate. Ultimately, the highly centralized Abbasid caliphate fragmented into multiple smaller, independent political structures. These new political structures diminished Abbasid power. It was perhaps this political decentralization and destabilization that led to the spread of Islam beyond the massive Abbasid empire's borders. Regional rulers who did not have to manage such vast territories were able to expand more fruitfully in single directions. Religious alternative. One simple reason for the spread of Islamic culture is that it offered a vibrant spiritual alternative to the pagan polytheism common to inhabitants of the Arabian Peninsula. After the fall of the Abbasids, alternative social and political structures filled the vacuum. Sufi religious institutions were on such alternative structure. Sufi Missionaries were responsible for many conversions in sub-Saharan Africa and in South and Southeast Asia. By the late Abbasid period, Muslim rule was no longer an Arab phenomenon. Muslim Kurdish, Persian, Turkish, Mongol and Afghan leaders secured power in places as far apart as modern-day Turkey and modern-day northern India. From there, Islam spread to modern-day Malaysia and Indonesia. Trade and finance. One of the important reasons for the spread of Islamic culture is trade. Trade flourished immediately upon the establishment of the first caliphates and continued to flourish for hundreds of years. Caravans, groups of travelers who used camels to transport themselves and goods across land were critical to the spread of Islam. Just as camels enabled the first caliphs to expand their empires, caravans allowed the Abbasids and other powers to expand their civilizations and enrich their cultures by linking provinces which were far from one another. Advanced road networks enabled caravans filled with soldiers, pilgrims, envoys, merchants, and scholars to travel across vast territories. Along these trade routes, merchant communities developed. Muslims controlled parts of the Western Silk Road and were influential on trans-Saharan trade routes. They also were powerful entities in maritime trade in the Red Sea, Persian Gulf, and Indian Ocean. They created a sense of internationalism and multiculturalism. This cultural exchange seems obvious to our modern sensibilities, but at the time, it was an entirely new way of thinking about the world. New cultural relationships resulted in the transfer of technology, science, and other cultural forms. For example, introduction between Arab Muslim forces and the Tang dynasty may have resulted in the exchange of the technology of paper, which revolutionized the Muslim world and later traveled to Europe. Art and architecture. Art is also an important factor in the spread of Islamic culture. Tend to obscure the importance visual art has played in the history of Islam. Islamic artists produced innovative antiques, calligraphic works, pottery and carpets, just to name a few. Art historians also credit Muslim architects with many architectural innovations, especially with the use of domes and arabesques. Advanced education. Islamic advances in education also helped to explain the spread of Islamic culture. Muslims established the first madrasas or Islamic schools during the Umayyad Caliphate. Students in the madrasas learned to read and write Arabic and received instruction in Islamic theology. Early modern Europeans owed their knowledge of Aristotle to Muslim philosophers. Islamic thinkers in Persian contributed to development of mathematics, especially algebra. In addition, Muslim scientists pioneered various advances in astronomy and geography.